Hey everybody, it's Robot here from Vespa Motorsport, scooterwest.com. Thanks again for watching and supporting our channel and supporting our Vespa shop here in San Diego, California, scooterwest.com. For all things Vespa, you know where to go, scooterwest.com. So just like the previous video, I covered everything I know about the oil filter for the Vespa. Today, the air filter. Well, the air filter, can't really dissect it too much. They're a lot simpler than an oil filter, but do a similar function. They just filter the air before it goes into the engine because you don't want to have any dust or debris or any type of particles going into the engine. And air filters on two-wheelers are typically divided into two different styles. And it's usually just engineered, so it's sometimes possible to go between the styles, but most of the time they're either a paper element, much like the oil filter, or they are a foam element, which is the vast majority of the Vespa and Piaggio filters are foam elements. And they have their pluses and minuses, and later in this video, I'll get into some of those pluses and minuses between the two types of air filters. But first of all, I'm just gonna do a quick summary of all the different shapes because they have quite a few different shapes of filters for all the various models. So we'll quickly go through all the different shapes and I'll quickly read the part number, just the base regular part number filter. And the last part of this video, I'm gonna go into the several different styles and brands that we have. For instance, the Vespa GTS filter, we have 5 different variations of the filter, always in stock at scooterwest.com. And I'll go over the differences and what you get for the premium filter versus just the budget filter. So the first filter, probably the most common filter for the do-it-yourself mechanic that has a modern Vespa, is the filter for the Vespa GT range. And this is GT200 all the way back to 2004, 2005, up to the latest and greatest HPE GTS 300. So pretty much the same shape filter, 831997. And we have many different variations of this filter I'll go into later. So you can kind of see the general shape of the GTS filter. So 200cc, 250, and 300cc. So if you own a Vespa ET4 or ET250, pretty much sold in North America from 2001 to 2005, this is the shape of the filter you'll be using. A couple different variations, Malossi, premium filters such as this Piaggio filter, part number 487401. So if you have a Vespa LX50, Typhoon 50 or Typhoon 125, the early Fly 50 or Fly 150 with a 2-valve engine, so the earlier style Fly, this is the filter that's for you, 843194. So if you have a Primavera or a Sprint, either a 50cc, a 150, could be the early motor or the one that has the iJet motor. Part number B018070. And we also have the premium Piaggio filter along with the Malossi filter. If you have the later Fly 150 with the 3-valve motor, B017901 is the filter that fits that specific model. If you have a 2005 Typhoon 50 with a 2-stroke engine, this little filter is the correct one for that model. Also fits the pretty rare Vespa LT50, which is called the Liberty 50 in many markets. They're very early ones. It's a very small filter, part number 487719. So if you have a BV or Beverly 200 all the way up to the 500, not including the 350, or any of the MP3s, the MP3 400, 500, this is the correct filter for those models, 829258. So you have the Vespa ET2, 436478 is the part number for that filter. If you have a BV 350 or a Beverly 350, 880001 is the correct filter for that model. Also available in the Malossi version. And the oddball of the bunch, if you have the Piaggio X9 500, 845 is the correct air filter for that model, and it's a paper element. So I'll quickly summarize the differences between a paper element filter and a foam element filter. A paper element filter is designed to run dry, so that means no oil or water or anything should saturate this paper element. It should stay dry over the whole life of the filter. The advantage of this style filter is it has a tremendous amount of surface area with the pleats, so typically they last quite a long time without service, and you could take them out and give them a little tap on something hard to tap out the big particles. So typically you can get a little bit more life out of them in that regard. Typically these filters cost a little bit more, but they certainly last a lot longer having more surface area. So as you know, the vast majority of Piaggio and Vespa products use a oiled foam element style filter. So this is foam, much like the cushion in a seat. The advantage of this filter is you can reuse it a couple times. The disadvantage is they only have a finite lifetime of reusing them, because the nature of foam is it kind of deteriorates after 5 years. So I would just recommend after a couple of years just replacing them. They're very inexpensive, so oftentimes you may just want to just replace it. Many of these Piaggio premium filters come pre-oiled out of the bag, so it pretty much can be installed into your scooter without any of the mess of oiling up a filter. If you go for the budget filters, typically this is a dry piece of foam. You do not want to put this filter into your filter box dry. You'll need to lubricate the filter with something such as this very sticky oil filter oil. This is my favorite oil for oiling up a foam element. I'm not going to go into K&N filters. Actually, they let quite a bit through. They're not really the best filter in my opinion. As an off-roader, I kind of know what filters keep the dirt out. Not really recommended, but this oil is what you'd use on one of these filter materials. In many of my service videos, I show how to use this oil. You pretty much just spray it on and then wring out the filter to excess oil. And it's just got to be a tacky oil, and you can kind of see through the bag the tackiness of the filter oil. In a pinch, you could use gear oil. It doesn't really stick as well. I highly recommend using a specific air filter oil on these foam elements. So again, the advantage is you could get some extra life out of them and reuse them. The disadvantage is they deteriorate over time, and the filtering ability isn't quite as great as a paper element. It just doesn't quite have the surface area. So if you get a thick amount of dirt built up on it, it can clog sometimes a little easier than a paper element. So another item I always recommend having on hand if you're going to change out a filter is a very thick tacky grease, such as this Maxima waterproof grease. We sell this at Scooter West, just part number grease. For instance, you got a BV or Beverly 350 filter. It's got this soft rubber edge on it. I highly recommend greasing the whole edge of it. It helps make the filter seal a little bit better. As with the boxes, the air boxes that accommodate these filters, they typically have an O-ring on the outer perimeter of the cover. I recommend putting a small amount of grease on that edge, and the idea of that is it keeps the filter box from leaking oil out of it, and it also prevents other debris or moisture getting into the filter box. It's one extra step, but if you're doing it yourself, might as well take the extra step and make the air box seal up a little bit better with something like grease. So the last part of this lengthy air filter video, pretty much I'm just talking about foam and paper. That's all I'm talking about today. Is the different variations of the filter brands that we sell. And I'm going to go over the GTS filter because that's the most common filter and we have the most brands available. So the most common and popular filter that we sell is the premium Piaggio filter. The nice thing about the premium Piaggio filter is it's pre-oiled, ready to install. No need to mess with spraying it down, a brand new filter for the GTS. And you see the part number 831997-0P. So they end with the letter P for premium. It's in a nicer bag. pretty much the same material as a less expensive standard filter. Same material, same thickness, kind of the cellular count. If you look at it up close, the cellular content of the filter is about the same. But if you buy the less expensive non-premium filters, typically going to be an aftermarket filter. Same quality, but you're going to need to oil up the filter on your own. So the #1 company for aftermarket filters for all power sports here in the United States, also made in the United States if that's important to you, is the Uni foam replacement air filter. Made in USA, AF13-UN is the specific part that fits the GTS. Same pattern, the fitment's perfect, of course. I don't really see much difference. The foam looks about the same quality as the original equipment filter, but it is made in USA, so that's one option, the Uni air filter. So the most popular options for the aftermarket brand filters, and I'll talk about the advantages and one disadvantage of both these filters. So Malossi has two different variations of the filters for many of the models. They have one called the double red sponge, and then just the standard one. So the double red sponge has a very coarse outer cellular material. It's got more cavities to trap the bigger filter stuff, and then it's got the finer mesh. I would say it filters just as good as the OEM filter once it's properly lubricated, but with this coarse outer mesh, it's probably able to trap more dirt. So I guess hypothetically, if you're riding on dirty roads, this may be your best filter. So the double sponge version is a little bit more expensive. It's part number M1414486. And you can see the content of how this filter is made. So if you're looking for the highest flow rate filter for your Vespa GTS, it would be the standard Malossi red sponge filter. As you can see throughout, it's all the very, very coarse material. So unfortunately, it doesn't filter quite as well, but if you're on clean streets, it's probably not going to be a problem. But this allows for a higher flow than the standard tight cellular structure of the original equipment filter. So it's very coarse, and of course, just like any other foam filters, you need to oil this. It's not going to work very well at all if you leave it dry in its filtering abilities. M1413811, and this filter is also available for the Vespa LX, CT4, the Sprint, BB350. There's the Malossi filters available for many of the models as well. And you can just punch in your make and model on scooterwest.com and see all the different various filters we have available for your scooter. So again, if you're looking for that 1/10 of a horsepower extra, because that's probably all you get at wide open throttle with a freer flow and air filter, this is it. The coarse foam Malossi filter. So congratulations if you made it through this whole video. I didn't think I could make such a long video about filters, air filters specifically, because there's not much to them, but it's definitely something that's necessary for the longevity and operation of your scooter. If you're looking on tips on how to install these, I would just suggest searching for the service, Vespa GTS service, 6,000 mile service, 12,000 mile service. I recommend looking at that filter every 6,000 miles or 10,000 kilometers. That's pretty typical across all the models. And if you're budget minded, you could certainly not replace it. I definitely recommend having filter oil on hand. The last thing is, how do you clean it? You don't want to spray this filter material over a dirty filter. Well, the best way to clean these is just with regular dish soap in a sink. Kind of wring them out with dish soap. You could use gasoline, but I find that gasoline deteriorates the filter rather quickly, and also the leftover gasoline can cause the scooter to run poorly initially until all the gasoline vapors evaporate off. So that's a problem. Plus, you don't want to be using gasoline on your hands. It's not a very safe or healthy thing to use as a cleaner or any type of solvent that's based on hydrocarbons. Just regular dish soap and hot water, wring it out several times, and then wring it out, let it dry, and use the filter oil, the spray a uniform oil coat on the filter. Thanks again for watching. This is Robot here. Till next time.